Well, this week we have Nick Christophers and John Alite to discuss their book, Prison Rules. This is John's second appearance on the show, and we welcome him back. The book takes an inside look at the U.S. prison system as told through the eyes of ex-monster John Alite. John is an Albanian-American from Queens, New York, who since his first incarceration at age 17 has been known as a mobster, former enforcer for the Camino crime family, and close confidant to the John Gotti family. John has been in and out of jail mostly in for a large portion of his adult life. Now today he's attempting to change that perception. People have of him and doing some good and hopefully saving a few young people from making the same mistakes he did. Co-author Nick Christophers is the author of the novel Destinies and former editor of the legendary publication Mob Candidate. Interestingly, most of the subscribers of Mob Candidate were prison inmates. Well, with no further ado, welcome to the show, John and Nick.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron. Thank you, Ron.
Well, the book is fascinating. It really is fascinating. I don't think I'll ever be a criminal because I don't want to go through it. But John, you were in 30 prisons?
Yeah, thereabouts, more or less. And unfortunately, I know the system, how it works from the wrong side. So hopefully we can teach some kids and some young adults not to follow suit and learn through the book, but not through the actual incarceration, hopefully.
Yeah, but you're too young of a guy. You must have spent most of your adult life in a prison.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like I said, I made some bad choices in life, and it took me a while to get life right.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
I'm trying to spread that word and hopefully save some kids and young adults and people that are struggling with their situations not to go the illegal route, and which sometimes you feel is the easier route, but in the long run, obviously, it isn't, and the pain and suffering isn't worth taking those chances and losing your freedom.
Right. And Nick, we were talking yesterday about your prison experience, right? Tell us a little bit about what happened to you.
Well, I didn't really have a prison experience. I was arrested when I was very young, and I ended up in I did an overnight, and it was even on overnight, I can't even imagine what John went through, but just staying in a cell overnight was weird and freaky in itself, and it was a pretty kind of traumatic experience at 21 years old, and it really made me think twice.
Wow, I can imagine. I've never been in jail, so I can never imagine what it would be like to do that. How did you two guys hook up for the book?
I'm not sure exactly. I think it's through a friend of ours, mutual friend. And when me and John met, it was excellent. I'm very happy to have met him. He's a phenomenal person, and he's inspired me a lot. And he has a very good, positive message. And it just so happened that me and John knew a lot of people, a lot of the same people growing up. We never knew each other at that time, but we happen to know some of the same people. And that's kind of helped us connect a little bit closer. And that's what made it easier for us to work on this book.
Right. Well, you're an expert in crime. You were associated with Mob Candidate, that really excellent publication, which is not around anymore, right?
Yes, correct. That is right. That was a great magazine for a while.
Right, on that then. And what I've always wondered, why did it go defunct?
I'm sorry?
Why did it go defunct? Why did it go out of business?
Well, it wasn't so much that it went defunct. The publisher decided that it was time to, end it, kind of a thing. And he just thought it'd be better. He came up with one magazine after that called President Street Boys, which is like an offshoot of Mob Candy. But he only put it out. We only put out one issue, and that was it. Because the publisher wanted to go and focus on writing. He wrote a couple of books himself, so he was focusing more on books than magazine.
Right. And John, we were talking yesterday. There's a lot of distorted information about you on the internet and misinformation, right? When I was referring to the Wikipedia entry, which I thought was really amazing. You have no control over it. Your entry on the Wikipedia in the internet.
No, I mean, you have this thing going on with Gotti for a lot of years. he's paying some of his friends and some, I guess, services to write against me on a public campaign against me since I brought out the paperwork of him starting to cooperate, and he hasn't let that go. So I guess he wants to put false information out there. And, people at this point, I think they know it's childish. I don't really try to take it down. I don't care what he does with Wikipedia or anything else. I'll send my message the way I am through these books like Prison Rules and writers like Nick and people that are experienced in the street, law enforcement, and people that know what the right message is to kids and youth out there. This is way past talking about me as far as what he's trying to say about me. People know the accurate news at this point. I was never convicted or found with any drugs or telephone recordings or weapons. I only went to prison because guys were informing on me, and those guys were guys like Gotti, who I brought that paperwork out on, and other made guys, and some underlinks that were involved with the street life. I was never caught, so, that misinformation of me coming in and cooperating is not accurate at all. It was these guys giving me up, and then I came back, and I've been very public about the street and against the street, and there's some adults that are involved in the street, and, that's their business, but and whatever they do, I don't choose to tell them what to do with their lives, but I do try to influence younger guys and young adults to live a good life and enjoy life.
Did you ever think that the I guess you'd call it a feud with the Gottis? Will that ever be resolved so that you can move forward without having to deal with that?
I think, I did move forward. I think that, if somebody's happy with their life and they're happy with their siblings and family and their wives or husbands or whatever they're doing financially, I think that they don't waste their time on other people's lives. I know that I don't pay attention to everybody else's life. My life is busy. I'm doing magazines like GQ, and I'm out and doing a series with Netflix, and I've done this book, Prison Rules. I've done Darkest Hour. I've done Gotti's Rules. I'm in the midst of working on Darkest Hour 2, some other Perfect Gangster 2. So I'm busy. I don't have time to worry about what somebody else is doing with their life. I'm pretty happy with my own, and we all have difficulties with our personal lives and our family besides that. And so, I guess they're not happy. So when they're happy, I guess that'll stop.
Right. That's a good attitude to have. And Nick, you're also an author, too. You did a book called Destinies, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that. What's that about?
That was my first book. I self-published at first, and it came out last year in February. But then it got picked up by a major publisher from London called Austin Macaulay, which I've been in contract with now for about 6 months. Mm-hmm. And that should be coming out again this year, but under their flag. The book's a mob story. It's fiction. Without saying too much, the main character is a woman, and it's about her getting mixed up, getting caught in the mob world unintentionally, and how she falls in love with the captain of the mob, who later becomes a boss. They have a child, and that child, the boss puts up for adoption because he can't take care of him. It's a little more complicated than that. Right. But what ends up happening, long story short, is the son becomes a prosecuting attorney. Right. And he ends up prosecuting his father. But he doesn't find out that it's his father until the last minute of the trial. Right. And at the end of the book, I kind of leave everybody hanging, like what's going to happen now. That kind of a synopsis.
Well, this book is
Ron. That was the fast version.
Right, it's very fast.
It's actually I've read some of it, and me and Nick talked about it. Nick's a great writer, actually. He's got, I think, a good view of the street from a writer's perspective. And my other writer, Susan Pike, and George Anastasia, both were. And George Anastasia is a very well-known criminal writer in the crime world. Susan Pike is a woman that is learned to be very knowledgeable in the street and about the mob, and in my opinion, she's a really well-versed writer, as Nick, and I think me and Nick are friends and personal friends on top of that, and over the last couple of years became closer. And I think that when you're close to someone and you get to know somebody more and more, I think it resonates when you write about them. I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed working with Nick.
Right. Well, what's interesting about your book is you guys are the authors, but you talk to a lot of people, didn't you? A lot of variety of people that give really good insight. Talk about some of the people you interviewed, including mobsters, or ex-mobsters, too.
Well, yes, John or me the question?
Nick, Nick, go ahead, answer that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Go, Nick. You can answer that.
Oh, well, some of the people John actually hooked me up with. Some other people I reached out to as well. I remember that there's one gentleman, his name is Mohammed. He was a correction officer at some of the state and federal institutions. And he was a very interesting person to speak to, who gave me a really interesting insight of how he interacts with the inmates and what their complaints are and what he sees that is right or wrong, to me that was pretty interesting to get his point of view. And then getting the other side of the tracks is a gentleman called Anthony Chiapecci, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He was the son of mob boss Anthony Casso, and he gave me his input of the street life and prison in general. So I got two different views, one from an ex-criminal, one from a correction officer. So I thought it was pretty interesting.
One of the purposes of your book, the main purpose is to help keep kids out of trouble.
Right.
So how are you trying to reach out to these kids, and what kind of reaction are you receiving, John?
Well, you hear the word, and you hear the word rat used loosely. A lot of times it's the adults that are teaching these kids the language and its immaturity, or whether street guys or regular people that go to work every day, and they don't really understand the knowledge, and that they give a perspective to these kids that's not right or completely correct. And you got fathers that boost to their kids that they were tough guys on the street, and they exaggerate, and they're nowhere near what they say they were, and so the kids are listening to a perspective that's not correct. And Nick has wrote and interviewed some of these people, but I could talk about other people in the prison system, whether they were priests or people that were involved with us inmates that have perspectives, or the medical teams or counselors, and everybody's going to have the perspective of what jail is really like to them, or jail life for us. But when you get guys like myself that spent years and years in several different jails in different states, and like me, different countries, you're going to get a better perspective to be able to teach these kids. Listen, it's not just the physical pain. I've said this over and over. There's so much emotional pain. Emotional pain with loss of contact, loss of family, not be able to see your kids, not to be able to see your parents, losing people to death while you're in prison. And the emotional part is the part that I want some of these kids to understand, because there's some tough kids out there. But if you're angry and you want to fight, get in the boxing ring, jump in the ring, be a gentleman, do it the right way, and let out your aggression. And there's law enforcement guys that I've met over the years that been, tough guys, and they're gentlemen, and they've been passing that same message. And then there's street guys. It's not just like everybody said, cut and dry. There's street guys that are really great guys that got involved in the street, no different than me. And people say great guys, well, some of them are killing the rub. Yes, I understand that's a contradiction of what I'm saying, but as a human being, some of these people are good people. They've changed. They made mistakes. They went the wrong way. Some of them feel they can't get out of it. Some of them can't get out of it possibly. But as adults, all of us should be passing the same message to the young kids. Stop this nonsense about who's tough, who isn't, and lead a good life. There's so much of the world to see, from state to state, country to country, beaches, movies, good food, good restaurant shows. Go live that part of life. I mean, this part of life of what I wasted, I'm just trying to teach people it's not the right way. I'm the same person, and if people ask me that, how come you don't go after the people that talk? Listen, that's done for me. I don't want to go after anybody. That fight is not with that person that's talking against me. The fight's within myself, not to lose myself and hurt another person. And I made that deal with myself that I'm going to enjoy the rest of my life. And I'm not going to hurt guys, or I'm not going to go after guys I feel that, maybe I should have in the past killed or hurt. And that's done. I'm going to pass a message of saving some lives instead of taking some lives. And I'm going to continue that with people like Susan Pike, George Anastasia, and Nick, Christopher, and people that I respect like yourself, Ron, that, some of these shows, I think we need to help some of these kids that maybe I didn't get that help I needed. And, I didn't talk to the right person. But now is our turn to teach some of these kids to do the right thing or help them do the right thing.
You ever wake up sometime and just sort of pinch yourself to realize how your life has changed so much, considering that one time you were sitting I couldn't imagine this, in a prison in Brazil?
Well, when I was sitting in a jail in Brazil, I kept thinking back of what made me want to do the things I did. What makes me now, when I want to hurt somebody like I used to, or I wanted to kill somebody like I used to, what makes me not want to do that now? And I say sometimes, because I had some real positive people in my life over the years that helped me get through some of this and learn to change my thinking pattern and learn to understand it, to like myself and to enjoy life, right? And
exactly.
And I think that, when I look back now and say, man, there's so much that I lost, I just want to make sure I can help some kids, including my own kids, to understand, don't lose the time and the enjoyment of life like I did. It's just nothing's worth that.
You have a couple of sons, right?
Yeah, I have 3 sons and a daughter and actually a grandson also.
That's really amazing, considering all the time you spent in prison.
Yeah.
You don't waste your time at all on that.
I kept the TVs off.
Nick, you spent a lot of time with John. What do you think of his transformation from the life he once led to what he's trying to do today, and how he's doing all these things? Netflix. I've been trying to get on Netflix for the last 3 years, so I really admire John for that accomplishment. What do you think?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to work with him. The mere fact that he has sort of metamorphosis of a different individual altogether. I admire what he's doing. I admire what he's done and what he's trying to do. And that's what drove me even more to work on the book with him. Because I grew up with a lot of tough guys. I was in a gang when I was a kid. I was shot at. I was stabbed. So I saw a lot of stuff. Maybe definitely not as much as John has seen, but I've seen a lot. And I've seen some of my friends get hurt, some of my friends go away, blah, blah, so forth and so on. And thank God I turned the page, sort of like John did, but a lot earlier.
Right.
I owe that to my father, really. But I realized earlier that this is not the right way to go. Exactly. And what John's trying to do is to educate people, educate young people, and to take a different road. Is the best thing I can think of. That his quote-unquote enemy, John Jr., I can't see what he's doing as anything positive for anybody, aside from blowing himself up with his ego. John's doing something very positive, and I think it'll affect a lot of kids. I think I know he goes and speaks at colleges, and he speaks to different places about the life and how this is not the way to go, and so forth and so on. I'm stunned of what he's done, because he spent majority of his life on the street doing things that you and I couldn't even think about doing. And how he transformed it is, to me, it's just astonishing. I think it's a blessing from God, what he's done.
What's interesting is, John is in his 50s now, and he's sort of a role model for older people too, right? To show that no matter what you did in life, you could always turn it around, no matter how old you are.
Oh yeah, granted, no doubt about it. I see him. I told my son about it. My son is 21 years old. Mm-hmm. He's straight as an arrow. Thank God he's nothing like I am when I was his age.
Right.
He's very major, and he's very big in martial arts. And I told him about John, and he watched something on TV, on YouTube about John, and he was very inspired by what he saw, and he really liked it. He said, "Wow, this guy's incredible. I got to tell my friends about him." Mm-hmm. And it was one night. I remember he had all his friends here, about 7, 8 kids. Italian, Jewish, Arab, all different nationalities in his room, and he put on the YouTube link of one of John's speeches. These kids were mesmerized. They didn't make one sound. They just sat there and looked. I was like, wow. So this, even my son was trying to promote what John is trying to get out there. So, and I was watching, all these kids are in their 20s. I'm like, wow, this is hitting these kids home. Exactly. And I'm glad that it is.
Yeah, I've seen John on YouTube, and it is quite impressive. But I also saw an interview, too, John, where you used the gun 40 times.
Yeah, I mean...
That's what you said? How did you use a gun 40 times? For what purpose, and what were the results?
Well, you know what, Ron, part of this conversation is to show somebody, and I was on a talk show the other day, and somebody called in and they asked, and I just rambled off about 15 or 17 names off the top of my head of guys I shot, and then after the show they were amazed that I could say their names and talk about them. And I'm saying, listen, my job before was to go out and hurt people for the most part, and then part of my other job was to go out and make money for me and the guys involved with me and the guys that work for me. And doing that, I was very aggressive. While I was aggressive, I was getting stabbed and shot and baseball batted myself, and that was part of the life. And it's such a dysfunctional way to live. And I said to myself afterwards, most guys, and I talk about a lot of the big mouths out on the street that are teaching kids the wrong thing, and they're letting their kids believe there were some tough guys out there, and meanwhile they were cooperating, or they were trying to cooperate, or they never used a gun. And I've said this over and over again. The same guys that talk never even loaded a gun. Forget about use a gun. So they're so insecure, they're not even man enough to be honest with their kids and teach their kids not to get on the street. I mean, so it's their ego and them promoting themselves before they even care about their own kids. So how are the kids going to have a chance, and how are they going to behave properly? So I got to go out there and tell the kids the truth. Yeah, I am this guy. I'm not proud of all that shooting, and I'm that guy that when someone talks nonsense about me now or threatens me or challenges me, I'm not that guy going out to shoot them or kill them anymore, because I don't want to hurt them. That means I lose. So, and I try to pass that message to kids. Listen, if it wasn't too late for me and I did it, I turned around, you're able to do it too if you really want to do it. You just got to get to the point where you say, I like myself better than I hate that guy. So in the old days, if Gotti was doing this to me, by now I would have killed him. If his friend there was harassing me like he did in the old days, he wouldn't have lasted, overnight before I really hurt him. And now I let people judge for themselves and say, wow, this guy really must be weak. You watch the show Gladiator and you see the son of the king, how weak he is. And I look at these guys that act like this guy, whoever else, like that. You can't be that weak and insecure that you don't want to pass a message to kids not to do this nonsense. I mean, you can't be that weak that your own ego comes before your own child. Or the way I speak to my kids, I want to speak to other kids, because somebody deserves, those kids deserve somebody to talk to them and really give them the truth about what goes on in the street. And I try to do that. And when people say, well, you're friends with a lot of street guys, I am. I meet a lot of street guys. They're adults. I'm not trying to change them. They know what I think and what I believe in. And they know that I want to pass this message to save some kids from suffering. I don't think there's anybody that can go on a show and challenge me. I'll challenge anybody to go against what I'm saying and talk on a show and tell me where I'm wrong for teaching these kids this. And so, or where they could tell me I'm full of crap, because I could sit here with you, Ron, or any major show, and I don't think anybody could actually sit here and really believe their nonsense and say that it's okay to put a kid in the wrong direction. So.
Well, we're going to stop there for a short break, and we're going to come back and talk about what's like in prison, talk about your 10 Commandments of prison, which I found very interesting. Scott, let's take a break, run a few commercials, and we'll be back shortly.
Dead Gold, the latest book in the Moccasin Hollow mystery series by Hawk McKinney, is out now. Craig Ingram, former Navy SEAL turned private investigator, gets involved in a series of brutal murders. when he decides to leave the quiet solitude of his ancestral home to go visit Aspen Police Department Criminal Investigation Division Detective David Spinner Krespinak. He soon learns that the dazzling lure of Olympic gold fame is a spotlight glare hotter than any 15 minutes of fame. During plans for a cross-country ski vacation, SEAL buds Spinner and Craig are ensnared by glamour, glitz, bling, and greed in the deadly champagne powder world of a money-gets-you-anything high-country ski mecca. Body parts are turning up in the most unlikely places. As the two friends start their investigation, a hornet's nest of the local elite do not want the publicity, and for good reason, for they may be part of the mystery of the bodies and body parts piling up at the morgue. The closer Craig and Spinner get to the killer, the more confused they become, and they also become targets. Who is behind the murders and the mutilations? The list of suspects grows as they close the net on the killer. The tender underbelly of Aspen is not what it seems to be. It's a raw, open sore that oozes blood, drugs, and murder. Dead Gold, Book 4 in the Moccasin Hollow Mystery Series by Hawk McKinney, is out now and available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and fine booksellers everywhere.
Hi, I'm James Baller of Artist First Radio, and I would like to tell you about a fascinating new book from Crime Beat's Ron Chepsick and co-author Mike Rowe. It's titled Robin Hood of the Hood, The Life and Times of Teddy Rowe, Policy Kingpin, and it's published by Strategic Media Books. The book is a historical account of Theodore Teddy Rowe, who courageously fought the Chicago Mafia, more commonly known as the Outfit, for control of the lucrative policy racket in the Windy City. Policy, often called the numbers, is a form of illegal gambling or illegal lottery, played mostly in poor and working-class neighborhoods in the United States. In Policy, a bettor attempts to pick 3 digits to match those that will be randomly drawn the following day. For decades, Policy had been a staple in the black community, but when the white mob flexed its power in the late 1940s, many policy kings knuckled under the pressure. Not Teddy Rowe. Rowe famously told mob bosses that he'd rather die than give up control of his operation. Robin Hood of the Hood chronicles an exciting chapter of Chicago history. Go to the Kindle store at Amazon and buy it for just $2.99. For information about this book and other titles, please go to strategicmediabooks.com. That's strategicmediabooks.com.
You are listening to Crime Beat on the Artist First Radio Network. All past shows are available as podcasts. You can pick them up at artistfirst.com. Now back to your host, Mr. Ron Chepsick.
Thank you, Scott. We're here with John Alid and Nick Christophers, and we're discussing their fascinating book, Prison Rules, What Life's Like Inside of Prison and How to Survive the Experience. The book is available everywhere, right, gentlemen?
Well, Amazon.com. That'd be the best place to go.
Amazon.com. And
Yes.
How about Barnes & Noble?
I believe so. On the website, on the website, digital,
Right.
through via internet.
We have a lot of international listeners, so it's available on ebook too as well, right?
Yes.
Right. And both you gentlemen have websites. Give us your website address, John.
It's www.johnelite.com. And Prison Rules you could find on that, and some of the shows I did, my other books, Scotty's Rules, Darkest Hour 1 and 2. And it'll show you where you want to go if you're looking how to contact.
That sounds good. And Nick, your website?
Yeah, www.nickchristopher's.org. Also, Prison Rules could be found there, and my other book, Destinies, as well. So they both, you can catch them on there.
I should point out that Christopher's has an S on it. It's not Christopher.
Yes,
it's
Christopher's, right.
Right.
Yeah, it's Greek.
Right. Right. People go to our website to get the spelling. And you, both these gentlemen are active on Facebook because you're friends with me, right?
Yes.
And people can connect to you. How about, do you guys tweet?
Yes, I do.
I don't.
I don't.
No, I don't.
Right. I would imagine there's a lot of stuff on YouTube on you, John, because I've seen some of it.
Yeah, I've got probably about 30 shows on YouTube, I think, or better. I'm not sure how many exactly,
Right.
but about that.
Right. Our listeners can check that out. Okay, getting back to prison rules, and we're going to talk about what life is like. John, describe the the first day when you come in. What do you do, and what's the experience like?
I think if you take a regular day and you think about it, the average human being when he's on his way to work or on his way to school or on his way when he just first wakes up, and no matter where you're at, if you're on the way to the beach or in a car and you get pulled over or they knock on your door and you get handcuffs on your wrist to bring you to a prison and for whatever you were doing wrong, I think the anxiety level, the first experience that somebody's going to get, the extreme anxiety level of not knowing what's going to happen to your life now. That, a lot of people talk crazy when they're on the street and free because they're not in handcuffs. They'll talk about they can do 20 years or 30 years of life or this or 5 years or even 2 weeks. But when the reality hits, that it's time to go to jail and that anxiety level, and you're first being cuffed and you're brought into a precinct or into a bullpen, I think that the experience of not knowing, the unknown, anything that's not known, obviously is going to bring anxiety. And then on top of that, you just lost your freedom. Maybe it's going to be just a short day, and that day will seem like it's 1 month because you're being processed very slowly and put in cells, mostly dry cells, and a cell with a toilet and other guys, and you're waiting to find the apprehension of them catching you and you worrying about where your family or if they're going to stick around, and maybe you're looking at a life sentence of 20 years. All that's going to run through your mind so rapid that the anxiety and depression will start, whether you realize it or not. And from that point, and then when they strip you, when you first get stripped, you learn, and people the first timers are going to learn the indignity of being in jail. Or the first time you have to go to the bathroom and sit on the toilet with 30 guys around you or 20 guys around, and you understand your privacy's gone. Your old world's gone. The reality of what's going to happen to you stage by stage is something you never really want to experience in life, and that's the message to give to kids.
And Nick, the expression I think is first-time shopper, which you use in the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the newbie coming in.
Yes. Well, that's something when somebody goes to, when they the first time they're in a penitentiary and they're going to the commissary to go buy something. They have their, whatever it is, amount of money they have on them. They go to buy something at the commissary, and a lot of, for the first guy, one other guy's going to say, "Hey, buddy, can you get me an ice cream?" And he'll, the newbie's going to be a little nervous and say, "Okay, I'll buy him an ice cream." Before he knows it, he buys everybody ice creams, and he's got nothing for himself. So that's like, as we call the first-time shopper. That's the first type of shakedown, if I'm correct, John.
Well, you got guys that'll go in and depends on the jail you're in, $250 limit, $300. The average is about $300 limit you could shop. And the new guy that comes in jail doesn't understand. Everybody doesn't have to rob you by physically beating you and taking your bag and your food and your clothing that you just bought. You buy the stuff. Everybody knows you're new in the jail. You might not know anybody in the prison. Right. You got every predator around that's experienced from the street. They watch you shop. They watch you bring your stuff back to your cell. They watch you lock it in your cell, and they watch you leave your cell. The minute you leave your cell, if you're a new guy and you don't know anybody, you don't understand the prison world, when you come back, your cell's empty. All your food's gone. Your sliders are gone that you wear in the shower, your bathrobe, or anything else you bought new. And you find yourself, and you're going to understand, well, I'm in a new environment now, so I just got robbed, and what do I do about it? And how does a new guy get through that? They got to learn, like anything else, like going to kindergarten. You're going to learn, real fast that when you first come in prison, especially if you don't know anybody, go shop and buy your essentials. $25 worth of stuff. Feel your way around the prison before you continue and spend money and show guys that don't have. Some guys are living in jail with completely nothing. So if they can't physically take it from you, when you're not around, they're going to rob it from you. And reality, again, is going to set in of how do you handle yourself in a world you don't really understand yet.
Well, it's interesting. You watch these movies and TV shows, and it seems like you're forced or you have to join a gang. Is that true in prison? That you have to have?
No, I mean, No, I mean, Ron, there's, it depends on the jail. Some are a little harder, some are easier, and some, geography is a big deal in prison. So guys from New York stay together, color, racial, religion, and that stuff's basically true in most jails. So if the Chinese stay with the Chinese, the Italians stay with the Italians, for the most part I'm talking about. And then you have, there's situations I can tell, like using the telephone. You pick up the telephone and somebody takes it out of your hand because they want it first. The new guy really doesn't know what to do. In the movies they tell you hit him right away, and that's not the answer all the time. Sometimes it may be the answer, sometimes it's not that cut and dry. So each situation in jail is going to change the way you react, and if you get into a fight in prison, you're going to find yourself in a place we discussed, solitary confinement. Now you're in a new world on top of being in a new world. And these are some of the decisions, and sometimes you're shipped out. You might be local to your house. If you live in New York in a closed jail, it's convenient for your family to see. But if you get into a fist fight, not that you fear getting into that fight, but there's repercussions of it that you might not want to have. And that means getting into a fight, you might be shipped now 8 hours from your family. So how do you handle not getting into that fight so somebody doesn't try to take advantage of you a second time? These are all things that somebody that has never been to prison doesn't understand very quickly. Exactly. So they're going to learn it and get educated as they go, unfortunately.
And Nick, in your book, you have a really astounding statistic that there's something like 80,000 to 100,000 in isolation, in solitary. And I know you've got strong feelings about that, right?
Well, yes. I mean, I've had a friend or two that, two of my friends actually, who are doing life right now, or have been doing life. And one of them has been in solitary confinement for like 2 years. He just recently got out. And the condition was unbelievable, what he was telling me. It's a very, solitary confinement is something a lot of people don't understand, unless they're, God forbid, in that position. It's something that is very hard to comprehend, where you're in a room where it's, like John said, it's dry, it's a cold. Most of the time, in the winter it's freezing, in the summer it's boiling. There's no, you don't have the freedoms of doing things that you would normally be doing. You're not offered anything. A lot of things you can't have, like a radio or something to write on, or whatever. There's certain things that you're supposed to get that you don't get. Mm-hmm. You may ask for something and not get it for 3 months. One of my friends, like I said, that was in solitary confinement, had a dental issue. He had a major, extreme pain. He had to wait a whole year to see a dentist. Just to give you an idea of how, imagine going through that.
Well, they don't drill. They don't drill in prison. They pull. So if you got a problem with your tooth, they're not going to drill like you're in the comforts of your home. They're going to pull your tooth, or you're not going to get a filling. That's not happening in prison.
Well, what's interesting is in your book you also say 60% of the inmates have a mental disorder, according to statistics, and you can understand why, what you described, right?
Well, yes, being in that kind of conditions, that would definitely take root, of course. I mean, you're not there. You're somewhere where you can't speak to anybody. You're like talking to yourself. Your best friend is a rat, or a mouse, or whatever. So it's like, it's just your mental state obviously is going to deteriorate eventually. So those statistics are not even, what I wrote there was what I researched and looked at while I was doing the book. I can imagine what it is now.
Exactly. We're going to have to take another break, short break, run a few commercials, and we'll be back with the last part of our program. We'll dig a little bit into the Ten Commandments that John presented in his book. John and Nick presented in their book. Scott, let's take a break.
Hello, everyone. Book 3 of the Moccasin Hollow Mysteries by author Hawk McKinney is out now. Curse of the Ancients. As Craig Ingram climbed the stairs of the derelict building, that peculiar stench of a dead body hit him. It was the same smell, no matter where. A special ops SEAL encounter gone sour, or in a vacant roach-infested apartment. Inside, his SEAL buddy, Grayson McGerald, head of Buckingham Parish's Homicide Investigative Support Division, was huddled with the coroner, next to a swollen, decaying corpse that was days old and hardly more than oozing dead meat. The private investigator inside Craig had a gut feeling that there was more to this than a dead body, and Craig's granny always told him, "Trust your feelings." But that was before the Russians set down 2 of his Black Falcon choppers on Craig's Moccasin Hollow private airstrip in an uninvited stopover. It got worse. From Moccasin Hollow to Israel and on to Turkey, a nightmare of one-of-a-kind ancient artifacts threatened the serene life Craig knew and loved. Will it also destroy the world? The Curse of Ancients by Hawk McKinney, available everywhere great books are sold.
Hello, Arnold Schwarzenegger here with an important announcement. You may remember me from movies like The Terminator, but I would like to talk about one particular movie where I go to Mars. There is this mountain called Pyramid Mountain, and all this crazy alien shit goes on inside it. Do you think that's all science fiction? Think again, my friend. That's why you have to tune in to Pyramids on Mars UFO radio show on artisfirst.com. My friend Kevin Estrella, he is in a band called Pyramids on Mars. He has also been contacted by aliens. This guy has been a guest on over 15 UFO radio talk shows, so you have to listen to him. There's something going on, and it can't be ignored. He interviews people who have been abducted by aliens. He interviews alien-human hybrids. This is no bullshit. So get to the chopper! Do whatever you have to do and go listen. Get your ass to Mars. Pyramids on Mars. UFO Radio.
You are listening to Crime Beat on the Artist First Radio Network. Send us your questions and comments to crimebeat123@yahoo.com. Now back to your host, Mr. Ron Chepsick.
Thank you, Scott. We're here with Nick Christophers and John Elite. We're talking about their great book, Prison Rules. They both got websites, nickchristophers.org. There's an S on Christophers. And johnelite.com. You go to our website, get their names. And their book is available on Amazon. And there's an ebook, and they're both active on Facebook. You connect them there. Nick is active on Twitter, and John isn't. And there's a lot of stuff on YouTube, which you can check on John on that. But getting back to your interview, let's talk about I don't know if you call it the elephant in the room, but big question. You hear a lot about rape in prison, right? And homosexuality by people that aren't really homosexuals because they're in for a long time. How true is that? And is that something that you really are going to have to face if you decide to be a criminal? John? Go ahead.
Listen, it depends on the jail. Human beings natural in life is contact with another human being. So I really believe in, I don't care if you have a life sentence, if you don't, I think that they should introduce back into the federal systems, it's in some state systems, conjugal visits. And I think it's cruel not to have it. So you have guys that do attempt to rape some guys, and the majority, is it like the movies say? No, not at all. But it does happen. I was in a McKean prison, which is considered medium high. It's not a penitentiary. A young Chinese kid came in. He went up to the top tier, looking for a rack, meaning a cell. They assigned him one, and there happened to be a guy in there that was doing about 40 years. And in the middle of the night, as soon as his lights went out, he gave him the bottom bunk, and he must have went down on the bottom bunk and tried to rape him, and they had a crime scene investigation. They re-locked up. The guy's already got 40 years. So all he's going to do is go to solitary confinement for a little bit, move to another jail. And I'm not sure exactly if he finished the rape or he just attempted it, and there was blood all over the cell the next day when they let us out, because it happened at morning early hours. In the movies, they always show it in a shower or something like that. Listen, that can happen in the street. It can happen in jail. It happens to women. It happens to men. It's unfortunately a criminal act that anybody with any kind of rationale looked down upon, and you hear a lot that these rapists get killed in jail. That's not true either. This isn't 1960 anymore. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen to them. Maybe it would happen less, but yeah, it could occur. I mean, it's not, but it doesn't. It's not rampant the way they make it sound in the movies. But anything can happen in any prison. I said this, I think, in the book, and I've said it in interviews for sure. You know, guys forget because they live in a prison and nothing happens for, say, 6 years or 10 years. They get friendly and they think they're at school. And they get friendly with the wrong people. Either they get killed, they get beat up, they get robbed, or they get raped. Because in jail, no matter what, you got to remember, you're in jail. And in jail, etiquette is a lot different than street etiquette, and you can never be comfortable. And the day you get comfortable is the day you get hurt, raped, or robbed. And, you know, it only takes one incident for something bad to happen. You could do 20 years, and it takes one incident. You can lose your life or any other thing that can happen to you. So, you know, jail's a serious place. And kids really got to understand it's not about just physical. It's about all this stuff we're talking about and the emotional and the lack of freedom to even take a shit, excuse my language, to go to the bathroom because you got to ask a cop, an officer in there for toilet paper. Some of them are good guys, some aren't. Like any street guy, there's some good guys, there's some bad guys, and if you got a guy that abuses a position, he won't even give somebody toilet paper to go to the bathroom. That's how somebody wants to live. That's why those choices, when you're going to do something on the street, you must think about it beforehand.
We just got a minute left, and having made a dent into the questions I had, because there's so many questions we could ask off your book here. I wanted to ask one, and ask Nick, and we only got like a minute, so we'll have to make this brief. The thing I found interesting in the Ten Commandments is do not ignore your hygiene. You put in there, and you stress that, and it's hard, to me, it would be hard to stay clean. And Nick, what did John tell you about that?
Well, he didn't give me too much of specifics, but I mean, even speaking about John himself, he one of the most important things about being in prison to survive is taking care of yourself any way possible. Mm-hmm. Push-ups, sit-ups, and if you can run outside and track.
Self-respect, right?
I'm sorry?
Self-respect.
Well, self-respect is, well, exactly. I mean, it's a main thing, and I'm sure John will harp on that. That's, I mean, he did. You could just look at the shape he's in, and the shape, even when he was in jail, he still stayed in great shape, because there's one thing that a friend of mine told me that another friend of his that was doing time, he said, you have to stay strong for your loved ones.
Right.
And that was a guy that was doing, I don't know, 15, 20 years in prison, and he said it to another inmate. And this guy told me what this guy said. It was just kind of harping on the fact on what John was doing. He was taking care of himself for his family outside.
We're going to have to stop it there, unfortunately, because we just got a couple minutes left on that. And the book, again, we have Nick Christophers and John Alite. The book is Prison Rules. We just got briefly into it. Maybe we should invite you guys back to talk more about this topic, because it's really fascinating. But I'm sure we're going to have both of you guys back on again. But we wish you good luck with the book and with everything else that you're doing, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being on our show.
Thank you,
Ron.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. Well, that was a fascinating show. We just dented the book, so you guys got out there. You got to get the book. It's really fascinating on that. Our next show is scheduled for June 20th, 2019, when we have Don Brown, the author of Travesty of Justice, the shocking prosecution of Clinton Lorenz. It's a war story. It's going to be really fascinating. We hope you enjoyed Crime Beat this evening on the Artist First World Radio Network. Wherever you are tonight, we'd like to thank all of you out there for listening to our broadcast this evening. In the meantime, we welcome your emails and thoughts about our program. You can email us at crimebeat123@yahoo.com. And please spread the word about our show. And until next week, we hope you tuned in to Crime Beat next Thursday, same time at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you want to have a front row seat to the fascinating world of crime. Sleep tight, everybody.
Dead Gold, the latest book in the